And in the Impact segment tonight, according to the Rasmussen Daily Tracking Poll released today, President Obama leads Mitt Romney 57 to 32% among voters 18 to 29. Among all likely voters, it's a tie, 45-45. Now, one of the reasons younger Americans support the president is because many American colleges have very liberal faculties. All the studies show that. At Occidental College, for example, in Los Angeles, there's a professor named Peter Dreier who has a new book out called The 100 Greatest Americans of the 20th Century, a Social Justice Hall of Fame. Included on the list, Saul Alinsky, Pete Seeger, Howard Zinn, Noam Chomsky, Bill Moyers, and our pal Michael Moore. All those people far, far left, as you know. In addition, Dr. Dreier recently wrote a piece on the Huffington Post praising Stephen Colbert's program. He says, quote, his nightly send-up of Bill O'Reilly's right-wing buffoonery brilliantly satirizes the absurdities of America's corporate-dominated political culture, unquote. Joining us now from Burbank, California, is Dr. Dreier. So first off, Doctor, can I have an example of right-wing buffoonery so I don't do it again?
Well, you know, buffoonery is in the eye of the beholder, Bill, and people who are today considered mainstream were called buffoons many years ago. So people who 100 years ago were in favor of Social Security or a minimum wage or women's right to vote, they were called buffoons. So if I were you, I'd accept that as a compliment. Being a buffoon just means you're out of the mainstream.
All right, you are a distinguished professor, all right, at Occidental College, and you said that I am guilty of right-wing buffoonery, so I don't want to do it again. So can you just give me one example so my audience knows what that is, right-wing buffoonery? Just one.
Well, for example, I've heard you criticize Social Security, and Social Security was called socialism back in the early 1900s.
When did I criticize and what did I say about Social Security?
Well, you know, Bill, we're talking about progressives, liberals, activists, reformers. Those are the people in my book. And there are some people in my book who are Republicans, like Earl Warren and others, Supreme Court Justice. And I admire anyone, including yourself, who's willing to step out of the mainstream and be a dissident and challenge the status quo. And that's what you do, and that's what the people in my book were doing. And that's why in my article in the Huffington Post I was praising Pete Seeger, because Pete Seeger has a long 93-year
Pete Seeger, he did good work on the Hudson River. He floated up and down. He sang his song, played his banjo. I got no problem with Pete Seeger. But I do have a problem with guys like you, Doc, going on the Huffington Post and perpetuating propaganda. Now, I asked you twice. I'm not going to ask you again. I don't want to belabor it. You can't give me an example of right-wing buffoonery that has been on this program. You can't. Yet, you put it in writing. You give it to the Huffington Post, which will print anything. And they put it on there. And then people read it and they go, oh, that's right. That O'Reilly's a right-wing buffoon. Your students think it's just part of the propaganda mill that on both sides. I mean, both sides use the propaganda mill, but you're guilty of that. And for a distinguished professor, because you have that label out there, you're distinguished. I think that might be beneath you to say that without being able to back it up.
I think that Jane Addams was distinguished. I think that Franklin Roosevelt was distinguished. I think that Martin Luther King was distinguished.
All right. Dr. All these people in your book, and right, but let's talk about some of the people you didn't put in your book. Now, remember, this is a Social Justice Hall of Fame. Okay, I got that.
Absolutely.
You're coming at it from a left-wing position. But there's no Dwight Eisenhower on your list. Now, he wasn't an ideologue. He wasn't a conservative ideologue. You have Betty Friedan. You have Malcolm X. You have Bill Moyers, Jesse Jackson, and Bruce Springsteen, but no Dwight David Eisenhower. Are you kidding me?
Dwight Eisenhower was a great military hero, and at the end of his 8 years as president, he warned America about the military industrial complex.
Yeah, so he should be right on this list, and he's not there.
So, you know, maybe in the second edition of the book, he might add Eisenhower.
So Bruce Springsteen makes the first edition, but Eisenhower is going to make the second one.
You know, Bruce Springsteen has been the voice of working people for the last 30 years. Yeah. Eisenhower was a brilliant general, but in terms of support for civil rights, for women's rights, for human rights, he waited 8 years until the end of his presidency before he warned us about the military-industrial complex. He had to go into Little Rock, Arkansas, kicking and screaming.
So
I don't consider Eisenhower to be in the tradition of Theodore Roosevelt or Franklin Roosevelt
you wrote the book, and you're entitled entitled to your opinion. You're entitled.
Yeah.
So you now explain to me this. This is fascinating. You seem like an honest guy. I mean, I think you made a big mistake with the buffoonery thing because you can't back it up, and that makes you look intellectually deficient. But so far, you're pretty honest. So you write this book, and you teach at Occidental College, and it's all left-wing stuff, all left-wing. You admire them. This is who you are. This is where you live. So when I come on the air and I said, you know what? Academia in America, sharply to the left. I'm telling the truth, am I not?
Well, not really, Bill, because what today is considered to be left-wing to 50 years from now might be considered to be conservative. Most Tea Party supporters, for example, support Social Security, but 100 years ago, that was considered a radical idea. So, you know, the book is really about the heroes of America that took ideas from the left progressive side of the fence
book. And I have no beef with that,
turned it into the mainstream. And so, Bill, you're going to get Social Security someday. I'm sure that
I'm giving it back. If you watch the program, when you said I criticized Social Security, I never have. All I said was when I get my Social Security check, I'm giving it back to the government because I don't need it and I want other people to have it. Hey, Doc, I got to run. Thanks.